you everybody for your patience. I apologize for the 5-minute late start. Tonight we have a very honored guest with us all the way from South Africa. We have Dr. Lesego with us, who will be sharing, talking about a few of the LONGRICH products that we have and their efficacy, how wonderful they are. And she might possibly share some testimonies as well. We will have a Q&A session, and we do have some co-hosts from around the world, one from Nigeria, one from the UK, and one from Canada later on. Okay, Dr. Lesego, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you for coming.
How's everyone doing? And thank you for the invitation. I'm truly honored. I've been with LONGRICH since 2018, towards the end of 2018. And it's been quite a blissful journey. You know, when I started with LONGRICH, I was at the lowest point in my career, in my business, in my finances. And ever since I joined LONGRICH, my life has been completely transformed. I've traveled overseas. I've managed to close down a practice which I started that was struggling. I have managed to start a business which is doing exceptionally well. And I'm still growing my wealth through the LONGRICH platform. My passion in LONGRICH has always been about the product, just purely because I have an understanding of what the products can do for our people in particular. So if you look at the standard of healthcare, it's deteriorating. It's not just in South Africa, but in many parts of Africa, where, you know, within the Black communities, there is a setting or a standard of healthcare that is not commensurate with other communities, so to speak. And when I started doing my research on the LONGRICH products, I discovered that these products can actually help a lot of our people that require a certain level of medical care. And that's where my love for the product started. But besides that, I have, you know, when I joined LONGRICH, I had suffered miscarriages. And, you know, I started learning more. The first product I knew, sorry about that. My network is a little bit unstable tonight.
Oh, right. We were wondering.
So I might
okay, you're back now.
Faster. But let me just quickly go into the products. You know, the product that I love the most is the sanitary pad. And that's because it's a product that has helped me heal, just finding out and knowing what the product is all about. And it's a product that every woman needs to consider using. So something that we never really talk about, it's called period stigma. We don't like talking about periods. No women likes talking about periods besides to complain about the sanitary pad that they're using, that, you know, it's causing them itchiness, or that it's leaking, or they have got, you know, abdominal pains, you know, heavy flow and all of those things. And hence we have termed it period stigma, because not many of us want to talk about it. But let's quickly go into the menstrual cycle. So a woman will go through this menstrual cycle every 28 days. But before we see, you know, the blood, which we call the period or the, you know, menstrual blood, there are certain things that happen in the background. And so when we look at the menstrual cycle, there are about 4 phases. The first one is the follicular phase, whereby there is a hormone within a woman's body that stimulates, or called the follicle stimulating hormone. And what it does is it stimulates the follicles. And then what happens is, once that is done, there's about a bit of time. And in that period, so this is the egg that starts to develop. And then the second phase will be the ovulation phase. So if you look at the woman's reproductive organ, this is how it looks like. We have the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus, and then we have the uterus, we have the vagina, you know, and that's the developing egg, the ovaries, and we have the fallopian tube. So if you ever heard someone talk about having a baby that was stuck in or an ectopic pregnancy, that's because their baby or the embryo was stuck in these tubes. After the follicle has developed, we go to the second phase of the menstrual cycle, which is the ovulation phase. And this is where the endometrium will start thickening. So while I'm here, a lot of people have heard about people who complain of endometriosis. So what happens with endometriosis is when you start, so there are cells here, it's when you start having these cells develop outside the uterus, and hence people will have a condition known as endometriosis. Quite a very painful problem for a woman. And once there's been an ovulation phase, in the ovulation phase, an egg gets released, and this egg will travel for about 24 hours. And the time that the egg travels, should a woman have sexual intercourse and a sperm is released into the uterus, it's released, the egg will meet with the sperm, and that's where we will start the process where an embryo is formed, and then it will end up in something that looks like this. Now, in a process that fertilization does not take place, where the sperm and the egg meet, what will happen is that now we will go into the third phase of the third phase, yes, of the menstrual cycle, the luteal phase, whereby the egg will get released. And what we will also have at that time is that there will be shedding of the uterus lining. Now, with the thickening of the endometrium, the purpose of that is so that the uterus can start preparing itself. Because remember, as soon as the egg is released, there has to be some fertilization. So the endometrium will thicken in preparation for implantation, or should pregnancy be the result. And this whole process will take about 28 days. So a woman will obviously go through this every 28 days, and a woman will see her period for anything between 4 to 7 days. Now, when a woman goes on her periods, there are issues that a woman will experience, what we'll call modern day women's problems. And it will be itching or the swollen vulva. Some will experience cervicitis, which is the inflammation of the cervix, or vaginitis, which is the inflammation of the vagina lining. Some will have, what we would refer to as increased volume. Some will experience lower abdominal pains, can be excruciating to an extent that some of the girl children will not go on their periods. Some women, or actually even more younger ladies, will experience headache in combination with abdominal pain. And some will have edema or swelling during the menstrual period. So whether it is heavy flow, whether it is itchiness, whether it is low abdominal pain, today we know that these things, they're actually causes. And that is what a lot of women have benefited from ever since they have started using the LONGRICH products. Now, in terms of menstrual...
It's being recorded, please.
Is everybody okay?
Yes, it is. Phale, can you please not interrupt? I have already answered you on the chat. It's being recorded on live on Facebook. The replay will be available after. Please don't do that again. Thank you.
Okay, so in line with with accordance with how women, or the norms, is that a woman has to use menstrual products, and these products are all about catching the menstrual flow. But the problem that we now know is that based on a survey that was published by the World Health Organization, which is an organization that has become quite popular these days because of the COVID-19, the amount of data that they are collecting from different research bodies, from different laboratories and all of that, they are responsible for ensuring that information that is of the interest of the world's population is being made available. So they've done a survey, and what they discovered, or what the conclusion of that survey was that about 62%, or more than 62% of the diseases of the female reproductive system is due to poor quality sanitary napkin that we have been using. So that's quite a high number. So what I usually like saying is, if you think about it, if there were 10 diseases of the reproductive system, the female's reproductive system, 6 of them would be caused by the use of poor quality sanitary napkin. And I mean, a lady will start, or a woman will start using these sanitary napkins from as young as 11 years old, depending on when they start with their menstruation. And it's not just that, there are many other gynecological diseases that have been attributed to the use of poor quality sanitary napkin. Now, we never knew what a poor quality sanitary napkin was until LONGRICH came up with this information, opened our eyes, and we started questioning, you know, the sanitary napkins that we have been using. Now, here's the thing about the poor quality sanitary napkins. Not all of them have poor quality, but what we know is that, especially when it comes to certain countries, developing countries like Africa, we are not receiving the best sanitary napkins, or some of the products. So what we know is some of the products that we're using have been recycled. And the reason being, recycling has become an important activity in the modern day because it's all about saving the planet. So things have to be reused and all sorts of things. So how do you know that a sanitary napkin is of a poor quality? So again, what LONGRICH has discovered is that about 50% of the sanitary napkins that are available in the market, particularly developing countries, they do not meet the quality standards. Now, here's the process of manufacturing, you know, a recycled sanitary napkin, is that, you know, with some of them, they use paper pulp. And with paper pulp, there could be anything. So what I would like you to do at home is, you know, just to take out your sanitary napkin and pour water on it, leave it for a while, and it has to be good lighting, and open it. If the sanitary napkin, if the color of the cotton wool inside turns yellow, it tells you that that product or the material that's been used has been recycled. That's a simple chemical reaction that happens when a bleach material comes into contact with water. And that's what I have seen with most of the sanitary napkins that I have investigated over time. Now, with this, you know, material that they use, they obviously have to bleach it, as I've already mentioned. And now the problem is that in the process of recycling the material, there is rayon. And then this rayon is almost like a synthetic material. And the rayon releases what we call dioxin. And again, dioxin has also been listed by the World Health Organization as one of the human known carcinogens. That in simple terms means that it can cause cancer in a human body. Now, you and I know there is a high number of African people in particular who are being diagnosed with all sorts of cancer. Cancer was not very common, you know, within the African population, but now we're seeing more and more individuals being diagnosed with cancer. And if you think about, you know, cervical cancer, cancer of the uterus and all that, we do know that, you know, the cause of cervical cancer, it's a specific virus. But now what happens is, if we are using a product that contains cancer-causing agent, or that is a cancer-causing agent, that's where we need to start worrying about it. Now, dioxin can be found in a couple of things, you know, and the thing is, once the body has absorbed it, it lives in the body it takes 7 years for the body to get rid of it. Now, I did further investigation. I looked at some of the companies to see if they really agree that there is dioxin in their products. And you know, the findings were quite shocking. You know, some admitted that, you know, there is dioxin, but the disclaimer was that it's not that much to cause, you know, any harm. But here's something that's very interesting. It's that, you know, a woman will use about 16,800 sanitary napkins on average throughout her menstrual period. Now, that's very interesting for you and I as ladies. If we are using 16,000 sanitary napkins, that just basically means that those are the number of times that we are exposing our bodies to dioxin. And that's why it's so important for you and I to start considering the sanitary napkin that we have been using. Now, here's the thing about dioxin. In a woman, it can cause cancer, as I have already mentioned. It can also cause miscarriages. It can also cause birth defects. Now, this is where I really got excited when I found out about this, and I swore that I will never allow another woman to be denied such information, or allow another woman to have a miscarriage if it is that the cause of the miscarriage can be eliminated. There are, of course, many different causes of miscarriages, but for me, the fact that I've been using a product that has got a byproduct that could have potentially caused my miscarriages, it was enough reason for me to be passionate about this product and ensure that every woman knows and make an informed decision about the sanitary napkin which they choose to use. Now, in terms of the quality or the quality control, what the LONGRICH has also reported is in the 50% of the products that do not meet the quality standards, what they have found is that, some of them are damp, the packaging is not airtight, they're not sterilized, and they are not breathable. So with the product being breathable, it means that there is an exchange of air. I'll talk a little bit about it in a bit. So, that's the reason why I became so passionate about LONGRICH product and actually made it my responsibility. It was not just about my background as a healthcare professional, but it was more about social responsibility, so to speak. Now, this many times, many of you might have seen this, but what this indicates is, what happens with the different sanitary napkins that we are using. So brand M is a much better, in comparison to the other brand, much better sanitary napkin that absorbs. So that means for a woman, she might not experience any issues with leakages. But as I've mentioned, it's not just about leakages. It's about what the pad consists of. And just going back on the earlier slide, for the companies to use the pulp or processed material, they need to use bleach, and they don't use household bleach. They use industrial bleach. As a woman, if you ever blot on your underwear, many of us will not put it in bleach, even if it's white, but we will wash it properly, even if we have to soak it overnight. But if you are using a sanitary napkin that has been bleached, or that consists of material that has been bleached, it's enough for you to reconsider. And another thing, on the side, they use glue to stick the material together, or the different layers together. And again, they don't use normal glue. They use industrial glue. And all of these have a potential harm to a woman. Now, one of the interesting things about our anatomical makeup is that as a woman, we have got a very thin and sensitive vaginal lining. Now, what it does is that it easily absorbs whatever that can be underneath. It could be, the menstrual blood, and it could be just catching a simple germ or bacteria while sitting on the toilet. Now, the question that I like asking ladies is, how long does it take for you to sit on a toilet? And roughly could be anything between, if it's a public toilet, no one will spend more than a minute. And even when we go to a public toilet, we don't sit on the toilet. We either wipe the toilet seat, or we squat. And that's purely because we have an understanding that by sitting on a toilet seat, you could potentially stand up with a UTI. You could potentially stand up with, a vaginal infection. And that's a basic understanding that if, as a woman, you are concerned about catching a simple, infection by sitting on a public toilet, you should be more concerned about a product that you are using for 3 to 4 hours. And that, it's just one pad. You can calculate how many pads you use, during your menstrual, during your period. And you should be more worried about something that, you know, you stick with or you sit on for 4 hours than a toilet seat. Now, the brand that is in the middle is the LONGRICH pad, and that just shows you the absorption. I've done many demonstrations, and I have been able to confirm that the pad is at least, you know, 2 or 3 times more absorbent than a standard sanitary napkin. So that means that you can use it for longer. When I say longer, I mean, you know, for anything between 4 to 5 hours, not more than that. And this is the reason why. So if you look at the layers of the sanitary pad, you'll notice that there's about 8 layers. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but the most important layer that I would like to talk about is the green strip. Most of us call it the green strip. Now, what is so special about the green strip is that it contains magnetic energy, it contains an ion, it also contains far infrared. Now, what I'm going to focus on is the anion. What is an anion? It's a molecule that exists in the atmosphere. It's a molecule that actually you and I have in our bodies. When it combines with oxygen, it helps with the transportation of oxygen. We do know that our cells die if they do not have oxygen. If a baby is born, and at the time when they are born, they lack oxygen, you know, they can end up with a cerebral palsy or, you know, suffer from birth asphyxia. So that just tells how important oxygen is. Without oxygen, we literally will die. Without sufficient amount of oxygen, cells die. You know, human cells need oxygen to survive. Now, in terms of the anion, we find it in different places. In a forest, there's a company in Japan, as I was doing, you know, more research, looking into some of the scientific articles, trying to make sense of all of this. They have actually measured the levels of anion. In a forest, there are higher levels of anion, and that is followed by the sea level. And then when they moved into, you know, an industrial area, they found that the levels of anion were the lowest. Now, if the levels of anion were lowest, there should be, you know, a counter molecule, and that molecule is called cation. Now, why is iron so important? It's not just about helping with transportation of oxygen in the human body, but some of the benefits of an iron is that it helps with the process of healing. It actually makes the process of healing faster. What an iron does as soon as it's absorbed in the body, or when you have high levels of an iron, is that it activates the body's own natural healing mechanism, which explains why, as women, why many of us have now started experiencing a reduction in the abdominal pain. And that's because wherever you know, the body's natural mechanism is unable to fight itself, what an iron does is it activates it, or the T cells, and that's where the body starts fighting the inflammation. What an iron also does is it reduces stress levels, and the benefits would be seen by people who suffer from PMS, premenstrual. So usually when women go on their period, you know, they will have mood swings, they'll have cravings, and all sorts of things. Now, what an iron does is there has been reported benefits of an iron in terms of reducing PMS. I myself have also benefited from that, and many other women out there. Now, if there is this anion, that's great. It reduces stress levels. It activates the body's own natural healing mechanism. It makes the process of healing faster. What does cation do? And where does this cation come from? So these are two, in its initial form, it's an ion, and then when it's positively charged and negatively charged. Now, with the cation or the cation, what happens with the cation is it does the complete opposite of what the anion molecule does. So if an ion activates the body's own natural healing mechanism, cation will do the opposite. If an ion gives the body energy, cation will reduce the energy levels inside a human body. If anion makes the process of healing faster, cation will do the complete opposite. So it will prolong the process of healing. So some of you, if you look at, different ways of treating, other diseases, or, just when you are sick, if your doctor has ever said to you, if you want to recover faster, put your cell phone away. And that's because cell phone has got this molecule called cation. So we've got very easy entry points. So like I'm holding my phone. So between the joints, that's where our bodies easily absorb this cation. In actual fact, where I found about this article with the cation, this Japanese company is trying to come up with a cation shield, and that's because they're trying to protect the body from absorbing this this molecule. So that's what you'll find in the LONGRICH study. That's the anion in its natural format. So once you put the sanitary napkin or the panty liner, the vagina lining, your body starts to absorb it, and it travels up the uterus, and that's where it helps a woman suffering from lower abdominal pains. Now, the other thing that or the benefit of the magnetic strip is that the magnetic and the far infrared energy, they assist with secretion from the uterus, and that's where some ladies who started using the sanitary, or not the sanitary pad, or the panty liner, once they start using the panty liner, they will experience what we call a positive reaction. So with that, they will experience some lower abdominal pains in at least the first 2 or 3 days, and they will also realize that they have got a different secretion. So the secretion will either have a smell, it could be even a fish smell, and some will have a different color. So it could be yellowish, greenish. So if that is what you experience after using the panty liner, you should not be alarmed. Many of us are walking around with old infections, which we are not aware of. And that also supports, what many women have benefited from just by using the panty liner, that you've got somebody that's been struggling to fall pregnant for years. They use the panty liner 2 or 3 months down the line, or even a month, they fall pregnant. That could just be that, there had been old infections, and what the magnetic and the far infrared assist with is just with secretion from the womb. Now, there's something that I would like to rectify at this point in time. There are women who have made claims that, the sanitary pad has caused them, or using the panty liner has caused them miscarriage. It is not the case. With secretion, it is not secretion of a fetus or an embryo. With that, the reason why LONGRICH has made a disclaimer that pregnant women should not use the liners or the sanitary pad is because it has not been tested on pregnant women. Simply that. Now, here's another advantage of using the panty liner or the far infrared and the magnetic energy, is that these energies they assist with increasing the acidity of the vaginal lining. Now, this is the one area in our bodies where we need acidity or high levels of acidity, and that's because I'm going to talk about alkalinity. Now, with levels of acidity, what that does is, remember, in our bodies we have got bacteria, good and bad bacteria. Now, with that level of acidity, that's how the body or the vaginal lining is able to destroy bad bacteria that exist. And what we have seen is, there are ladies who had yeast infections, who had candida, and they started using the LONGRICH sanitary pad or napkins. And, many of them have come back to report that it has helped with reducing the infections. So many benefits from the anion strip. I call it the anion strip, or what you would refer to as the magnetic strip. Now, if you look at other layers, you know, the layer which is very important for us is the layer that has got the gel, and that gel is what actually absorbs. Why is it so important for me to talk about absorption? So if you go back to the sanitary napkin, when you do your own little experiment at home, when you pour water on the normal sanitary napkin, I call them normal sanitary napkins. Now, if you pour water on it and leave it, and then you can pour about 50 to 100 ml of water, by the way, on the Longrich sanitary napkin. What you will notice is that with the normal sanitary napkin, if you squeeze it, what cotton wool does is it holds. And that's why when you squeeze it, the water will come out, because cotton wool does not absorb, or that material does not absorb, it holds. Now, what happens is, you know, if it's a lady, as soon as she starts moving or she squeezes her glutes, then she starts blotting on herself. It's not a woman who blots. Yes, it's, you know, we blot because there are accidents, but it is the cotton wool that does not absorb. And with that, it means that, you know, if there isn't sufficient or efficient absorption, what happens is that a lady has blood that sits on the sanitary pad, and over time there's bacteria that starts developing, and that's why when somebody's bleeding, the most important thing is to arrest the bleeding. Now, what happens with the bleeding, if it's a cut or whatever, bacteria starts to develop. Remember, we have got bacteria on the skin. Now, once bacteria starts to develop, and then it will go inside the cut. Now, with a woman, if bacteria starts building from, you know, on the sanitary napkin, there's bacteria or fungus. And the thing about, you know, this whole process is now you have got a sanitary napkin. Sorry, I should have brought a sanitary napkin. But you have a sanitary napkin and you have got the menstrual blood that sits on top. And you have got this fungus and this bacteria that starts building up. The vagina lining is very thin and sensitive. And where does it all go? I want you to always remember the toilet seat explanation. If it makes sense to you that sitting on a toilet seat that might potentially have, you know, an infection is extremely important for your health, then this should make sense to you. When we start talking about bacteria that builds on, or fungus, now you have got a sanitary pad that is not air permeable. Now what happens is that, or not breathable, is you have a warm and you know, an environment that supports bacterial multiplication. That's also another issue. And because the pad does not permit air in and out, that's also where the odor comes in. Now, if there's bacteria and fungus buildup, it goes into the uterus, because that's where it all goes to. Now, with the Longrich sanitary pad, it has got the hydrogel that absorbs. Now, with the bacteria buildup, the N-ion is an antibacterial, or it has got antibacterial properties. That's where this whole antibacterial property comes in. With its the technology that they have used, the N-ion is able to destroy 99% of the bacteria. So that means that for about 4 to 5 hours, that's what the research says, that the N-ion will remain active. So for 4 to 5 hours, you are covered from any bacteria buildup. And I mean, isn't that amazing? So women who are experiencing, you know, itchiness or rash, some will call it rash, or thrush rather. Now with that, if you look at some of the sanitary napkin, the top layer, now I'm going to the top layer, some of the material, they use plastic. And this is the plastic that causes or that irritates the lining of the vagina. And that's where a woman will start experiencing some itchiness. And here's also a thing about plastic is that, you know, with increased temperature, it starts to release its chemical composition. So when you go home, just take off the top layer and stretch it rather. If it stretches, you will see when you compare it to the Longrich top layer, if it stretches, it's a confirmation to you that they have used plastic. What I normally say in my trainings is that I believe that the sanitary napkin was developed by a man, because I don't think a woman would do, these kinds of things when it comes to a product that is so important and a product that, every woman uses every single month. I want to stop right here and ask if there are any quick questions.
Thank you so much for sharing. I noticed that Star Saliu, he had his hand raised earlier. I'm not sure if he has a question. Mike, there is a question in the chat that is asking whether the panty liner can be used for family planning. Can the panty liner be used for family planning? Okay,
so a panty liner cannot be used for family planning. And this is the reason why, for family, it's hormonal. The panty liner does not change your hormones or the NI strip. It does not change your hormones. So pregnancy is completely, it's a different thing. So if you want birth control, you either condomize or you take a pill or injection, but you can't use the panty liner for birth control.
Okay. Thank you so much. I've heard quite a few things about the far infrared. Can you explore a little bit more on that?
Okay, so yeah, so far infrared is an energy. And by the way, here's also something that I'd like to explain to, the viewers. We actually do have these energies. So last time I had a question about the far infrared and its use in the prevention of I almost said pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer. Now, there's also an article or research that's now going into the far infrared energy, and they are investigating the use of far infrared energy in the treatment of prostate cancer. So that is where it comes in. But as I said earlier, with the far infrared energy, what it does is it helps with increasing the acidity of the vagina lining. So in terms of, hello?
Is that a good thing for the acidity in the vagina lining to be increased?
Oh, yes, that's what destroys the bacteria, the bad bacteria. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Let me look and see more questions.
Yeah. So in terms of far infrared, I never make. We also have to be very careful with the information that we give. Some of us have to be a little bit more responsible than others, especially when it comes to, making claims about the panty liners being used in the treatment of prostate cancer. Like I said, I'm still doing more research about this, following, the research that's been done in how the low dosages of far infrared can be used, to target specifically prostate cancer.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Somebody's asking whether we need to dampen the pad before use. I think the answer to that is no, because
I have to answer that question. So we don't have to dampen the pad before we use it, because your body, remember, we have these energies, and I said you also have the energy, and the pad is also using that energy for absorption. So you don't need to dampen the pad. The panty liner does not have hydrogel, so it will not absorb the water, but the pad will definitely absorb the water. So here is what I do with the panty liner. So if somebody has got wounds, if somebody has burns, we had a couple of individuals in South Africa in particular. One had gangrene, bad gangrene, and her foot was supposed to have been amputated. She had the one foot, none of the foot were amputated, or the feet were amputated. So she was supposed to go for amputation. It's an old lady. I have shared, the photos on social media, Facebook in particular. And, uncontrollable diabetes, and, the family had to consider amputation, but she refused. She did not want that to be done, and started, talking to the downline, and I recommended she uses the panty liners. So she started using the panty liners, and as I said, the benefits of an iron That's what we are benefiting from. It reduces, it activates the body's own natural healing mechanism. It makes the process of healing faster. And as I said, your skin has got bacteria. Now, with the N-ion, what it does, the strip, it destroys the bacteria that's on the skin, the bad bacteria that's on the skin. So she started using the panty liner, and later on, they started adding the toothpaste. And as we speak today, her wound has completely closed, and her outcome, so the outcome of the wound it's amazing. We've had individuals, we have cuts, and in actual fact, the strip, it's used in some of the surgical wards. It's referred to in a different name, but the N-ion strip is also used in some of the surgical wards, advanced, and they use it in the treatment of patients who have, cuts, who have, burns and all sorts of things.
Yeah. This is really interesting, very engaging. In fact, the questions are now flying on the chat. Another question: do you support the practice of putting the green strip in drinking water? You put in anions in the water?
I do not support that at all. Now, here's a reason why people put the green strip in drinking water. Because, so this is where the issue of, do I need to pour water on, or do I need to wet a panty liner? Now, N-ion gets released. There are two mechanisms of releasing the N-ion. It's in water and also through contact with the skin. As soon as there's friction, the N-ion gets released and it gets absorbed into the skin, and then it travels through the blood stream. Now, when people put the panty liner inside the water, that's the second mechanism where N-ion is released. And this is where there is a misunderstanding when it comes to now having to pour water on the panty liner, because it's another mechanism of releasing the N-ion. But if you're going to put the N-ion against the skin, you don't need to pour any water or to wet the panty liner. Now, the strip was manufactured specifically for use externally. If you look at I've tried this, so if you remove the strip, you can never remove it carefully. There's still the fluff that remains, and that's not good for your lungs. It's not good for your health. And that's the reason why we discourage. LONGRICH never ever developed the N-ion strip for drinking purposes. So please, rather get the alkaline cup, because it also is full of N-ion.
Okay. We have a question that keeps on. Thank you so much for that. There's a question about too much acidity in the vagina. There is information that it's not good. I don't know whether you can elaborate on that, because you said differently. I think the person just needs reassuring, because they've asked.
It's not too much acidity. It's not too much. So it's not too much acidity in the vagina. It increases the acidity of the vagina lining. Too much of a thing is not right. Too much alkalinity is not good. Too much acidity is not good.
Right. Okay. We're coming to
it's
another
acidity
question.
than alkalinity.
Okay. Thank you. I hope that clarifies.
So it's best when there is acidity. It's better when there's acidity than alkalinity.
Right. Okay. I think that clarifies it for the person.
Yeah. You can't have too much. Yeah. Not too much.
Okay. Can someone in the late stage of prostate cancer preparing to undergo surgery use the panty liner? Surgery to take away the balls. Can that person use panty liner?
Yeah. So here's the thing about cancer. There's a reason why there are stages. So it's from stage 1 to stage 4. So if we talk about somebody who's in the late stages of prostate cancer, is it stage 3 or is it stage 4? Now, the prognosis for somebody who's in stage 3 and stage 4 is completely different to somebody who's in stage 1 and stage 2. and for reasons that, you know, it has to do with the morphology of the cancer, it has to do with whether it has metastasized or if it has moved to other organs. So like I'm saying, the prognosis of somebody who's at the late stage of any cancer is very poor. So yes, they can use the product. And this is the reason why. When it comes to patient treatment, everything is about the quality of life. So even though you are in the last stage of cancer, it's not that you're going to be denied medication or treatment, or whether they go, you know, for radiation and all sorts of things. All that these products are about, and that's why LONGRICH refers to them as supplements, is to supplement whatever else that you are using as a primary treatment. For such a patient, the N-iron strip will assist. And I've mentioned the benefits earlier. So yes, definitely, these products are not limited to people who are using them for prevention, but we need to be, oh, now my connection is a bit unstable, but we need to be very, very careful with patients who are in the last stages of cancer. We need to manage their expectations. We can never tell them that there are LONGRICH products that are going to help you. If it's in the early stages, that's completely different. But if it's in the late stages, the prognosis is quite poor on its own. So we have to manage the expectations.
Okay, well, we've got a lot of questions here and they keep on coming. You know, like somebody is, my answer to somebody who's done fibroid, can they still use it? Yes, we still have the same question coming up about, do we need to wet it? You've answered that already. We've got another question. Done. Yes, yeah, there's no need to, because it's the friction will activate it, won't it? For somebody who is on family planning who hasn't been menstruating for a year, can the panty liner help? Well, the person hasn't specified what kind of help they want. Is it because they want to menstruate? Is that the reason why they're asking?
So this person has been off birth control. Is that what they're saying?
They're on birth control and they haven't menstruated for a year. So they're wondering if panty liner can help. Help what? Do you want the person to get pregnant, or I don't know. I'm not quite sure about that.
They want to get back their menstrual cycle. So a handful of individuals that have came back to report that now they're seeing their period after using panty liner.
Okay.